I'm recording to my computer and we're live over Facebook. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Karim. We're ready.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amna, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Today, I wanted to talk about writing effective conference proposals, and I'll focus on practical guidelines we can use to hopefully get our proposals accepted. So to understand what conference organizers are looking for in a proposal, let's first think about what's a conference. So the conference is an academic convention for academics to exchange ideas and information. It's a means for professionals to stay up to date on current research trends in the field. So the emphasis is on ongoing research projects that are innovative and interesting for both professionals and researchers. So conference organizers are always looking for proposals that cover cutting-edge research with proper design and theoretical framing. They're also looking for interesting topics that are likely to engage and draw both academics and professionals in the field. And they are really interested in practical implications that audience can apply either in teaching or research. They are also looking for concise, clear, and well-organized presentations so the audience can attend as many talks as possible and absorb as much information as possible. So what they do is they ask people or researchers for proposals, and they think of the proposal as a sample of their presentations. So if they see that your proposal flows logically, they assume that you have a well-organized presentation. If you provide an informative description of your study, they assume that you can offer a clear explanation of the study. If your study has diverse implications, they assume that this means it will steer an interesting discussion on the topic. So generally speaking, what conference organizers expect in a proposal, they expect it to be informative, concise, interesting, logical, and clear. So they wanted to offer an informative account of the study design, findings, and implications. But they want that account to be concise. So they want you to describe the data collection methods, procedures, finding in a few words. And that's why they are always strict about the word count or word limit. Because again, that reflects your ability to describe or present all of your talk in 15 or 20 minutes. They also want something interesting, an interesting topic, findings, implications, applications, something that would attract the audience, something that the audience would find interesting and would like to learn more about. They also want your proposal to be logical in framing the topic in theory, in empirical literature, in practical applications. So they know that you can present your presentation or present your information concisely and clearly. Finally, they want to see a clear proposal. They want to understand your ideas clearly because this shows you can communicate your ideas and information effectively to your audience. So typically we have two types of papers that correspond to two types of proposals: research-oriented papers that focus on research projects and data collection and findings, and practice-oriented papers that focus on pedagogical innovations or interventions. And we're going to take a quick look at the structure of a proposal for each type of paper and demonstrate each of these components with an example from one of my proposals that were accepted in an international conference. So first, we'll talk about a research-oriented proposal. And a research-oriented proposal is composed of these elements: context, niche or gap, research question, theoretical framework, methods, results, and implications. And I'm going to demonstrate each one of these with an excerpt from a proposal that was accepted in the annual conference of the American Association for Applied Linguistics, which is the best applied linguistics conference worldwide. So the first thing you want to introduce your research is the context of the study. So what are the research foundations of this topic? You want to tell the reader about what the research says about this topic by reviewing previous studies on this topic. And this way you're laying the theoretical foundation for your study by showing that it's extending an existing line of inquiry or addressing an existing research problem. So here I was talking about video game-based learning and ecological factors. So I used the literature to demonstrate first that digital games have a strong L2 learning potential, and that several studies demonstrate that ecological factors influence the learning outcome of game-based language learning. So this shows that there is a learning potential and the ecology shapes that learning potential. So that paves the way for my study. The second part is the niche or the gap, and that's the potential benefit of the study, how it could contribute to the literature, how it could solve problems or enhance practice, how it could bridge a gap in our understanding. So just filling a gap or doing a study on something that was not done before is not sufficient. You need to demonstrate that addressing this gap or this niche has a potential benefit, that it enhances our understanding of an important topic, or it serves to solve a practical problem that we're facing, or that it can enhance our instructional practice. So it's not just something new, but it's something new that builds up on existing research, and it has the potential to address problems or improve practice. So here I described, I was explaining that a deeper understanding of the ecological factors that shape game-mediated L2 learning is necessary to inform the integration of video games in L2 learning and teaching context. So you remember that learning potential I was just telling you about? We need to understand these ecological factors to harness these learning potentials. So that's the gap and niche, in the sense that it's not just filling a gap, but we are harnessing these learning potentials. We're improving practice. There is a practical benefit for examining this area. Next comes the research question or the focus of your inquiry. So the specific points that you have explored in your study. So here I made it clear that I'm looking at how personal factors in the gaming ecology affected player-game interactions in their use of language. After that comes the theoretical framework, and research studies, theoretical framework is really important because it's the theoretical foundations of your research. It's typically a learning theory or a theoretical perspective that you will use to frame your study. And it really provides, it grounds your study in major learning theory to give it authenticity and credibility, because it guides and informs how you collect data, how you analyze data, and how you interpret data. And in the proposal, you don't need to be so elaborate about the theoretical framework, just mention the theory and provide a citation like I did here, informed by ecological approaches to L2 learning. So the reader or the audience know that your analysis and your data collection and your findings are framed in a key learning theory or a theoretical framework. Next comes the methods section, and that's where you describe the study design, data collection methods, procedures, and data analysis. And here you have to be informative yet concise. So you have to cover all the key points, but very briefly. So what did you do? How did you collect data? From whom? What kind of participants and why? What kind of design did you use? So here, that's probably the lengthiest part of the abstract. And here you want to provide as much detail as possible, but you have to be very concise. So I think the balance here, or the key to balance these two opposite qualities, is to just provide a little bit of information about everything. What kind of participants, what kind of data, what kind of data collection methods, what kind of data analysis, and so on. Just one sentence about each one of these. So here I describe what the project looked at, and the data collection methods, so questionnaires, think aloud protocol, walkthroughs, gaming journals, and I explained how the data was triangulated, coded, and analyzed. But again, I covered all of these, but very briefly. Next comes the results, and this is where you present the findings of the studies along with your interpretation. So unlike a journal article where you present the results in one section and you present your interpretation in the discussion in a separate section, here you present the two together because you want to be concise. So you describe any quantitative or qualitative findings you have come to and your interpretation of them. So here I described how my data analysis and interpretation revealed that player-game interaction was embedded in the gaming ecology, and these three qualities, learner, L2 proficiency, identity, and gaming experience, shape these interactions and their L2 learning potentials. So now the reader knows exactly what I found in the study and how I interpret these findings. Finally, and probably the most important component is the implications. And these are the practical applications of the findings, either for research and practice. And I think that's key to getting the proposal accepted, because the more beneficial the applications, the more likely the proposal is to be accepted. And a lot of conferences now are just tired of pure theoretical research that is only done to advance theory without clear pedagogical or research applications. So adding a sentence about how these findings could improve instruction or improve research development or any practical applications or benefits can really go a long way in making your proposal more appealing. So here I talked about how understanding these ecological factors can help educators adapt, select, adapt, and integrate commercial video games for an L2 instruction context. And this proposal was accepted at AAAL out of 400. So 400 proposals were accepted this year. I think that was 2018. 400 proposals were accepted out of 2,000 proposals. So 2,000 proposals were submitted and only 400 proposals were accepted. So that tells you how competitive the process can be. And this is why I think you really need to emphasize the practical benefits, because that's one strong reason why reviewers would accept or select your proposal. So that's the research-oriented proposal or paper. Now let's switch to the practice-oriented proposal, and that's proposal focused on pedagogical interventions or implementations. So typically this proposal has 5 key components: background, practical or pedagogical problem, proposed solution or technique, content overview, and practical benefits. So again, I'm demonstrating this with a proposal that was accepted at TESOL International this year. And it's going to be, it should be available online by the end of the month, because as you know, TESOL International is happening virtually this year. So the background, that's where you provide the research-informed information about the topic. So that's where you give the reader a little bit of background about this kind of pedagogical intervention. So whatever your topic is, dynamic assessment, technology-enhanced instruction, data science, whatever the topic is, give the reader a little bit of information about the pedagogical and learning benefits of this topic, so they know why this is relevant to language learning. How does it assist language learning and instruction? And focus on applications and learning. So how does it serve learning? What are the potential benefits of this field? And again, this is something that would attract anyone who's not familiar with the field to learn more about the field. Second, you need to talk about a pedagogical or a practical problem that is common in design and practice. So anything that has to do with designing instruction or pedagogical application, and you want to emphasize the significance of that challenge. How could it hinder learning or instruction? How big of a problem it is? Because the bigger the problem is, the more attention you can draw from the audience to it, because most odds are they have to deal with this problem if they are educators. Then discuss or present your proposed solution or technique. So discuss the pedagogical intervention that you're proposing as a solution to this problem. And here you want to explain your technique and how it addresses the problem, and provide the theoretical and research underpinning for your technique. So provide any background research or citations to demonstrate that this is not just your idea, or this is not just something you came up with out of the blue, but it's something that has been established in research and supported by key learning theories. So here I was talking about gameplay, and so I framed that in activity theory and ecological approaches. So when I present my framework of game-based L2 learning, the reader or the audience would see that as something credible, not just me fantasizing about what kind of learning could happen, but it's something grounded in research. So this again gives it more credibility, because this is just my opinion. It's not based on data or science. Finally, or next, you have to overview. You have to give the content, the conference reviewers an idea about the flow or the organization of your presentation. You want to explain the breakdown of your presentation. And typically, you should do that in 3 stages. So the first part, or the first part of the presentation, I'm going to do this. In the second part, this. In the third part, this. So 2 or 3 parts, depending on how long your presentation is. But usually it's 20 to 30 minutes. So I would say 2 to 3 parts. And try to, and ideally, or typically, people focus on theory first, like knowledge, imparting knowledge, sharing information with the audience. And in the second part, they focus on practical implication. And the third part, they focus more on problems and challenges that are related to application. So theory, understanding, getting information, getting familiar with the topic. Second, how we can apply this topic in the classroom. And third, what are the things that we are likely to deal with when we apply it, and how to overcome any challenges, how to design activities better. And finally, practical benefits. And that's probably the most important component of the practice-oriented presentation. These are the takeaway lessons that the audience would walk away with from the presentation. So these are the things that your audience would learn from the presentation. And really, I think this is the key to whether a presentation gets accepted or a proposal gets accepted or not, because practice-oriented conferences are all about improving professional development of teachers or educators. So what would the teacher learn from your presentation in terms of practical skills? So the more you diversify the takeaway lessons, the more you diversify the things that teachers can learn from your presentation, the more likely your presentation will get accepted. And again, you want to focus on practical lessons, practical skills that the audience would find appealing or engaging. So things that would solve their practical problems in the class, things that they can apply in the classroom, things that would improve their practice. So here I talked about understanding the learning potentials of digital games. That's probably something a lot of teachers would like to learn more about, especially if they are not gamers. Tips for integrating digital games in classroom activities and practical examples, right? So they want theoretical understanding, practical suggestions and tips, and examples for how to apply these tips and suggestions in practice. So
could we take a minute for any questions from the audience? Could we do that at this point? And if you have any questions for the audience, of course, feel free.
Okay, so let's just
so if anyone in our attendees would like to ask a question, that would be great. I personally have a question. Can I ask it now?
Yeah,
but it's a personal question. So you were talking that how we start with a theoretical understanding of the topic and that we need to include that. In one of the examples that you mentioned, I think you cited like more than 10 sources as part of your background information. And how important is that? Yes, that's the one I'm referring to. How important is that versus the idea of the word count and being concise and to the point? Because that was one of the tips that you mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a great question. So being concise, I cited all these references and I still provided all the information needed within the 300-word limit that was required. So I didn't go over that limit. Now, I have to strategize how I use these words because they are so valuable. In the background for the research-oriented presentation, I had to use these, so there are so many references just to demonstrate that I'm really knowledgeable about the topic. I'm really familiar with the research because this gives me credibility when I talk about the design of the study or the findings or the data. If I don't establish my credibility, my knowledge about the research, the reader or the audience don't have any reason to trust whatever I say about the design or the findings or my interpretation.
So basically, when it comes to a research, and if there is a theoretical framework, a researcher needs to prove that they are knowledgeable enough, that they haven't missed any seminal works in the field.
You have to prove your knowledge either way, but for the research-oriented paper, you have to show it more. So in the research-oriented abstract, you provide more citation when it comes to the background.
Okay.
But for the practice-oriented, you provide more citation when it comes to the solution and description of the solution and how the technique solves problem. So either way, you're demonstrating your knowledge. The only difference is the focus. Here,
the orientation of the paper.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I'll get to that. I'll kind of answer that question in the third section of the presentation, which is additional tips for writing proposal. But let's see if we have any other questions first.
So far, no questions about your presentations. So again, we can move ahead. For the attendees, again, feel free to just write a comment, whether here or over Facebook, but preferably here, of course, if you have any questions about what Dr. Karim is sharing with us so far.
So the only thing I have left is a few additional tips for crafting your proposals that hopefully will increase its chances of getting it accepted. So one, match your proposal to the conference. Demonstrate deep knowledge on the topic, leave no question unanswered, emphasize potential benefits and applications, and finally, revise your language. So matching your proposal to the conference, every conference has a specific focus. So for example, if you look at AAAL, it's more interested in ongoing research presentation. If you look at TESOL International, it's only interested in teaching-oriented presentation. Even if you talk about research, you have to do so in a way that serves, that improves instruction. So if you have a theoretical study about second language learning or psycholinguistics with no pedagogical applications, they will not accept it, regardless of how great the study is, because it doesn't match the orientation of the conference. So you have to understand the orientation of the conference and match your presentation to a conference that fits with the focus of your presentation. One thing that helps you understand that is to look at the description of the conference and the kinds of presentations or topics that appeared in the conference in previous years. Also, you can look at the conference strands. Most major conferences have several strands. So you'll find, for example, in TESOL, there's like a strand for language learning technology. So you know they have an interest in this area. So knowing about the strands and making sure your proposal or your topic matches one of the strands means it's more likely to be accepted in this conference. Also, matching your presentation to the theme of the conference. Most major conferences have a theme every year. So matching your topic to the theme makes it more likely to get accepted. For example, last year I was submitting a proposal to a small conference at the University of Arizona. It was an online conference. And the conference had the theme of using digital literacies to overcome COVID-19 effects. So I had a proposal about a gaming model, a pedagogical model for digital gaming, and it was not related to COVID-19 in any way. So I just had to adapt it to make it more relevant to the theme. By looking up, I just did a quick research online to find out what are some of the challenges of online instruction. I found that engagement was one that was well documented in the literature. So here it goes, using gaming to engage students in online instruction in the wake of COVID-19. So now my proposal is more in line with the theme of the conference, and the proposal got accepted. One thing you always want to check is any resources that the conference site provides. So TESOL International, for example, provides a lot of resources, specific guidelines, samples, rubrics for evaluating proposals. And also TESOL allows you to submit up to 3 proposals, which is very rare. Most conferences will allow you to submit only 1 proposal. So this year I submitted, I think, 2 proposals. One was accepted that I used here as an example, and the other was rejected. So use whatever the conference would offer you. The second tip is demonstrate deep knowledge. So as I was talking to Dr. Amina, using a lot of citations, using recent references.
Not a doctor yet. I don't want that to be documented. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm still working on the PhD though. Thank you.
Okay, best of luck. So describing recent research trends and findings in the overview or context, again, that shows that you're not just interested in the topic, but you also have a deep knowledge or a deep understanding of the topic. And again, this gives you credibility, because if you know the topic so well, you're qualified to share something useful and interesting with your audience. Next, leave no question unanswered. So one of the most common reasons why a proposal is rejected is because the reviewer didn't get all of their questions answered. So the proposal was missing a key piece of information. So something like, how did the data collection happen, or what kind of research design was used, or what kind of participant, or what were the main findings or the applications of the findings. So make sure that whatever questions come to the reviewer's mind is answered on your proposal. And one advice that I got from my dissertation advisor is to use the maximum word limit. So the maximum word count of 300 words, use 300 words, because this shows that you're doing your best to share as much information about the study with the reviewer. But again, be concise in your language. Don't say in 10 words what you can say in 4. And of course, this takes several, it's a skill that you practice and it improves over time. And usually you have to write several drafts of the proposal. So it doesn't go like you have to write it and then cut out some information, remove some. So you have to, it takes some practice and it takes some drafting to come up with a good proposal. Emphasize potential applications or benefit. I think that's the best selling points for a proposal, because remember, there are hundreds, if not thousands of proposals, and all of them are reporting on interesting research. What makes one more likely to get accepted than another is how many selling points it has, how many practical applications or benefits it has. So refer to as many potential applications as possible and try to diversify the applications to appeal to different audience. So if you only focus on research applications, you will only have researchers. If you only, but if you have different research applications, methodological, ontological, if you have different pedagogical applications related to design, instruction, you will attract a variety of different audience. And that again makes it more appealing to the reviewers. Finally, revise your vocabulary, spelling, and grammar, because if you don't, a single spelling mistake can give the impression that you're sloppy because you didn't take the time to revise it. And again, that can be the reason why, oh, if he didn't care to revise his or her proposal, they are not going to do a good job with the presentation. And try to use specific, precise academic vocabulary that shows that you know exactly the field and that you're familiar with the literature on this field. And try to be as concise as possible in your phrasing. So being wordy in your proposal doesn't give a good impression about your ability to deliver all the information that you have in the limited time that you have in the conference. So try to be as concise as possible. So this is everything I have to say about conference proposal. And I know that was a lot to process, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I didn't unmute myself. So thank you so much, Dr. Karim, for the presentation. I think let's just wait a minute. I think Dr. Ghada might have received questions, and let's just wait for our attendees to just type any questions for any unclarities in the presentation or any sort of questions that they might have on the content that was just delivered. Okay. Yes, Dr. Ghada actually just notified me that we have received a question about the formatting for the proposal. Is there a specific formatting for it?
That varies depending on the or conference. So some conferences would have like certain formats. So some proposal would ask you to provide citations or a reference page. Some would ask you for just a proposal with citations. Some would ask you for proposal and the summary of the proposal. Some would ask for keywords, some would, so it depends on the conference. It varies from one conference to another.
It varies from one conference to the other. So again, for whoever is submitting a conference proposal, they would have to refer to the regulations or read the guidelines for the conference very carefully to make sure that they actually commit to that, they actually follow them. So I think we have a raised hand from Iman.
Yeah. Iman, do you want to?
Yes. Hello.
Yes. Hi, Iman.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Well, thank you, Dr. Karim, and thank you, Miss. I'm sorry. She is the.
Amina.
Thank you, Dr. Amina. Thanks, yes, for both of you. I'm Imam from Egypt. I want to ask about, you said when you write your proposal, it's based on latest literature in the area, for example, of game-based learning, okay? This is a little bit, I know what you mean by the latest literature, but like when you, for example, write in Google Scholar game-based learning, you may find, for example, in 2020, many scientists or researchers did this. So which one should I pick from and build on, or anyone, you know?
You mean how to select the literature to be included,
It's,
right?
Yeah, like in 2020, for example, I may find like more than one. So which one?
Okay, excellent question, Iman. So first, in your literature review or the context, you want to demonstrate breadth of knowledge about the field. So you want to say that not just that digital games have learning implications inside, but you want to mention some of these specific implications. So you cite the references or you cite the articles that demonstrate the points that you need to mention. That's one. Second, you want to you want to have one article from each year. So for example, if you're citing 7 articles or 6 articles, you don't want all of them to come from 2020. No, one from 2020, one from 2019, one from 2018, because this shows that you've been following or tracking the development of the field over time. So again, this shows depth of knowledge. The other thing is, whether you pick this article or that, I would focus on 2 things. One, the findings of the study, because if I'm trying to show that game-based language learning has a lot of benefits to show that this topic is important, I will focus on studies that address learning potentials. Second, I would try to pick articles that appeared in the best journals in the field. So if you're familiar with Scopus journal ranking, I would go for Q1 journals that have high ranking, have high academic standing. And the more you explore the field, the more you will realize, oh, these are the similar articles that everyone is citing. So these I should include or I should refer to. Or these are the top scholars in the field who have done a lot of research, so I need to cite them. So if you're in game-based learning or literacy, you know that James G is one of the top scholars in the field, and you definitely want to mention his work just because everyone who knows something about game-based learning has read something for G, and once you throw the name or the citation, okay, they assume that you're well-versed in the field.
And does that answer your question, Iman?
Yes.
So it's not just about currency, it's about the impact of the research and most importantly, the findings. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yes, thank you. He explained the point very well. May I ask something else based on what he said, or just leave the floor?
Of course.
No,
of course.
Thank you. Yes, he mentioned about journals, to check some journals that has high factors. May you please just, you mentioned one of them. May you just maybe write in the chat box and other journals to be like as a starting reference when someone is doing his research?
Okay, so what I mentioned was not a journal, Iman. What I mentioned, Scopus ranking. Scopus is a database, a research database. And what Scopus does is it ranks the journals in 4 quadrants based on their impact factor and reputation, how many times they were cited, for how long, and so on. So Scopus ranking, if you Google Scopus ranking, you will find that all the journals are ranked by according to Scopus ranking. So if you find a journal like Language Learning and Technology and you search for Language Learning and Technology Scopus ranking or Q ranking, they also call it Q ranking, you will see that it's a Q1 journal. So Q1 journals are the top-notch journals. Q2 are okay, Q3 are barely, Q4 are weak. anything that's not on Scopus is not considered really good journal, is not considered scientific enough.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Yes, got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your interest, Iman, and your questions. We've received a couple of questions, Dr. Karim, if you have the time.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so there is a question about the order of the components that you've mentioned, because you mentioned about starting with the theoretical and then going to the methods and then ending with the implications. And again, can that be played with a bit, or the order is it has to be met in that order? It has to be kept in that order.
For the research-oriented proposals, you have to follow that sequence, because you need to establish the importance, the research grounding of the area. But for the practice-oriented, you can flip it around. You can start with practical benefits or problem. So you can play around with the order for the practice-oriented paper or proposal, but not for the research one.
Let's keep it academic for the research one. Okay. Can someone access, that's another question, can someone access former examples for conferences? Like if someone is applying for the conference, can they find like samples for proposals that got accepted at that conference?
Well, I think some conferences like TESOL offer great resources. Some conferences offer samples, anonymous samples of proposals, but most conferences don't. They offer guidelines, but not samples. So one thing you can do is you ask someone who got, or you find a topic, a paper that was presented in the conference that's in your field, very similar to your area, and email the presenter. Usually they have their contacts, and ask for his or her proposal.
Okay, that's a very good idea. That's very interesting.
Another thing is journal articles. Abstracts are very similar to the proposals. So looking at the journal article or research paper abstract gives you a good idea about what most of the, they are very similar to the proposal in most features. They include most of the same components. So again, that gives you a good idea about what goes into proposal. It gives you your example. And there are a lot of websites that are part of universities or the writing center at universities would have a page on writing conference proposals, and they might have some, they might share some samples.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But again, there's no strict, like it varies from one conference to another.
There is no sample answer, the cliche that we have in our education. There's nothing like that. Okay. Okay, so we're waiting if any audience member have any more questions. I have a personal question, but that's I'm using my position here. So again, you mentioned something about, no, it's true. You mentioned something about catering to the conference. So sometimes I have an idea, but then it doesn't necessarily is part of the main topic of the conference, but then I would look at the subtopics and I would try to cater or to make my paper or my interest or my research interest to fit in. How far can you take that? Because I've attended conferences and it's quite clear when people have catered too much to the conference's topic.
Well, I would either use the conference theme as a gap or a problem that my topic or my research can address, or expand or focus on how my research has practical implications for the theme of the conference, but I'm not going to alter my research, or I'm not going to make up things, you know?
So I think that's it. Iman, you have another question?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to just make sure of, like, understand something a little bit clearer than when we talk about when you are interested in something. It's something just about if you are preparing for a master's degree and then you want to pursue your PhD after this, or you want to apply for a conference. Just I think both are related. So it's when you want to discover your area of interest, you want to work on. It's not about just game-based learning, for example. Maybe you want to, if you want to know if you are interested in a speaking area, okay, or phonetics or whatever, how someone can uncover or understand this interest.
So you're talking in general, right? Not apart from conferences.
I think it's related also to the conference, or because, for example, I'm not gonna apply about or research something related to phonetics while I'm not interested in this, or game-based learning while I'm not interested in. So for someone, if you know your interests, of course you will know even late, how after that another stage, you make research or read about it or attend the course, whatever you're gonna decide on. But initially you need to find yourself first, which area in the language or language or teaching you are interested in. Then you start to think of the proposal and the conference. Yeah.
So you want to find your interest, go to conferences, yes. Because you'll find a lot of different topics, a lot of different areas, a lot of different questions. And as you attend these different things and different topics, one of them or more will attract your attention. You will hear something. Like I remember when I was in Egypt 15 years ago, when I attended a talk. I went to the AUC language, integrated language skills conference. And I attended a talk by an Irish guy he was an American guy, a publisher about corpus linguistics and its applications for pedagogy or for designing textbooks or learning materials. And I found that pretty interesting. So go to conferences, listen to different talks, and one of them will spark your interest. And I didn't end up researching corpus analysis, but it just gave me a sense of direction. I knew I'm interested in technology. So another thing is to read the textbook. So if you know you're into technology like me, read a monograph, a textbook that talks about computer-assisted language learning. And in the books, you will find a chapter about games, a chapter about social media, a chapter about blogging, a chapter about chat, and a chapter about virtual worlds. So you get, by reading these diverse or textbooks that summarize research, you can get a broad idea about the field. So you know you're interested in this field, but you don't know exactly what topic or what area. This gives you a broad understanding of the field, and you can say, okay, I'm interested in this area, and then you explore this area more, and then you find a topic.
Thank you. Yes, got it. Thank you so much.
Also, you can think of how you can relate whatever you're studying to your personal interests. So I'm a gamer. I love playing video games. And I learned a lot from video games, and I like technology. So I kind of combined the two.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. I got and have an idea about what you are talking about right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karim. I'd like to thank all our attendees here, whether actually those who attended over Zoom or those who attended or followed the session over Facebook. So thank you so much, and bye-bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Iman, actually more than once for the questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. You're welcome, of course, Ms. Rashida and Ms. Huda. Thank you so much for attending.